Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Shaw Local Bears Insider Podcast. I am Chicago Bears beat reporter Michael Dwojak here with the Northwest Herald's Joe Aguilar as we are joining you guys on Friday morning, February 20th. We are a few days from what I like the what I like to call the kind of the thing that kind of kicks off the NFL offseason. That's the NFL scouting combine in Indianapolis. Everyone from the NFL heads over to Indianapolis for the week and talks to each other, works through some trades, some stuff like that, but also kind of works through getting to know roughly 300 scouting kids who are trying to make it into the NFL. So it's the NFL schedule never stops, and so we are going to preview that. What we expect them to do in next week's scouting combine. We'll also talk a little bit about the stadium news. But Joe, things don't really end here. I know the season officially ended a couple weeks ago, but the NFL has a firm grasp on our lives. It seems like every single month of the year.
Yeah, poor you, because you've got to write about it daily. I mean, I don't know how you do it because it's like you're writing football when there's no football news, and you're coming up with ideas. There is always something to talk about, but no, much respect for what you do and all the beat guys covering the National Football League.
Yeah, we love this thing, right? Like, obviously, like the
Yeah,
NFL knows that this country loves its sport, and they find a way to make it. They find a way to make it interesting every single month. We'll have free
yeah.
agency in a couple weeks. We'll have the draft for April. Then it's mini camp in May, and then June. I feel like middle June to middle July is literally the only time the NFL doesn't enter our minds, and then it's like, oh, it's training camp. It's like, ah, well, there goes the year. So we always have something to talk about. So exciting to see you guys. If you guys are joining us on the YouTube stream, make sure you give us a like and subscribe. Get your comments and questions in there as well. If you see us on Facebook, we can also see your comments and questions. So make sure you get anything you want us to talk about in there. And if you're joining us on the podcast, thank you so much. Make sure you subscribe and rate us there as well. And appreciate your time in joining us. And if you want to be part of the live stream, check out our social medias or subscribe on YouTube. That's the best way to know when we'll be going live, especially during the off season when we're kind of in a more unpredictable schedule. But Joe, I know the title of this is, what can the Bears accomplish at the scouting combine? But I'd be remiss if we didn't talk at least a little bit about the stadium news. Big hula yesterday on Thursday when the Indiana House Ways and Means Committee unanimously passed the amended Indiana Senate bill that would essentially set up the committee or whatever you want to call it that would basically find land and build it all up for the Bears to build a stadium. It's kind of like what the White Sox have with their Illinois. I forget what the official name for it is, but it would essentially help the Bears find land, build up the stadium, and give it to them for rent, and then eventually they could buy it. So it wasn't an unexpected move. By any means, I think we all kind of expected to pass. It'll now move on to the House where it'll face a full House vote, and then I think it'll go back to the Senate because the bill was amended, so they have to do that again. But none of this is expected to get any backlash from any of the Indiana lawmakers. It doesn't seem like. It seems like it all passed pretty easy, and they'll all have to do it by next Friday because that's when the Indiana legislature ends. I have had to learn a lot about the Indiana legislature, Joe, which I never expected to do when I took over this job. But I want to get your initial reaction. We'll get to the Bears comment on this as well, but to start things off, Joe, this wasn't really a surprise, was it? Like, we all kind of expected this to happen pretty unanimously.
Yeah. Well, first of all, nice job by you on the front page of my Northwest Herald today. You wrote like a political writer. It was more because that's what it is at this point. You're not talking about Caleb Williams and his clutch throws. So nice job by you. That's not my bag, honestly. Writing politics. So you did a great job of navigating and explaining that because it's tricky language and So anyway. No, you know what? Like it's like everyone's leaving Illinois, right? I know friends who've left Illinois, and now it might be my best group of buddies, my Chicago Bears, leaving the state of Illinois. I mean, there's a couple aspects to it. First of all, it's not a done deal.
No, it's
It has to
far
be
from.
stressed.
Yes,
Far from it.
I want to stress that enough because a lot social media yesterday was a bad place. There are so many videos,
It
so
really
many.
is.
So yeah, I don't have to tell people about how terrible social media is. But there are so many videos out there proclaiming that the Bears are leaving for Indiana. They are not. This is just a foot. It's kind of like sticking your toes into the water and be like, oh, this kind of seems interesting. Like they are far from. This is far from a done deal. I just wanted to interject that because I saw that everywhere on
Yeah.
social media yesterday, and I want to make it very clear that this is far from a done deal. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's okay. It just seems like one party really wants the Chicago Bears, really wants to have a relationship with the Chicago Bears. And then the other party or the guy is like, okay, yeah. But one state really wants the Chicago Bears, and the other one, you're starting to wonder. And that's disappointing. And there's so many sides of this, Michael. I really don't know where to start. I will say, just if this happens with Indiana, um, you know, like you mentioned the last time we did a podcast, like the pride and joy of Illinois. Well, it won't be the pride and joy of Illinois. In a way, it would be hard to grasp that. It would just be very disappointing to know that Indiana would have two great stadiums. And Chicago has, we know Soldier Field would be vacant. The property in Arlington Heights is still vacant. It'd be really weird. I need to get over it probably if that ever happens, because ultimately, if you're watching the Bears in an NFC Championship game at home and Caleb Williams is throwing for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns, are you going to matter that the game is actually in Indiana? You just want the Bears to win, assuming they will still be called the Chicago Bears, which I assume they would be. That's way down the road if the Indiana plan ever came to fruition for Indiana. But there's so many questions I have about the logistics, about the stadium. I mean, it's only about 30 miles, the area they're talking about in Hammond from Soldier Field. But that
Hammond
just
is
adds to
technically closer than Arlington Heights, which is kind of funny. Like
it
Hammond is,
is.
for those who aren't familiar with Hammond, like Hammond is literally on the state line. Like you can walk
Yes.
4 city blocks and you would hit where they want to build the stadium. So that is something kind of funny too about it.
Well, and I wonder too, just like, and this might be way down the road when they actually put shovels in the dirt, but the problem with Soldier Field, everyone who's been to a Bears game, whether you're a season ticket holder, you go once a year, you've been once in your life, the traffic situation. You can't come in from the east. It's a real pain. Once you get a mile from Soldier Field, you just want to park your car on the road and walk the rest of the way. Can't do that. So the logistics of getting in and out of Soldier Field is the biggest problem. Plus the stadium is small, and we all know that. But if this new facility were built, would it be easy access? Would it be like, because that's part of it, Michael, you got to, when I covered the Bears, when I was with the Daily Herald and as part of our coverage for a dozen years, game day, I mean, even today, there's really not a lot. Fans should know, like, for reporters, most guys aren't writing pregame stuff to write before, kickoff and stuff. So, there's not a lot to do before kickoff. Am I correct in how you cover the team? But you got to get down there way early. Like, you got to leave your house depending on where you're coming from, for at least 4 hours in advance to beat some of that traffic, and then knowing you're going to have to deal with that Lakeshore Drive traffic and all that once you get close to Soldier Field. So it's just a mess going. Forget about the prices involved. That's another subject, another story. But so if this new facility were built in Indiana, that's all the questions I have. How accessible would this be? We talk so much about the distance and where fans are coming from, but it really is once you get close, how easy is it to get in and out? And I really haven't heard that talked about. Maybe I'm way ahead of the game here with that. But those are some of the questions I have going forward with if capital letters, 60-point letter size, if that ever comes to fruition.
Yeah, listen, infrastructure is going to be a big project regardless of where this goes. Like if it goes in
Right.
Arlington Heights, they're going to have to do huge infrastructure there with what is it, like 53 up there, that they'll have to figure that area out. If they do Northwest Indiana, they're going to have to build that area up, figure out how they can get some connections from the Skyway and that kind of stuff. Like there's a lot to talk about here, but it's just this whole process, Joe, has just been so interesting. The Bears came out with a comment yesterday during the committee. They released it, where they said the passage of Senate Bill 27 would mark the most meaningful step forward in our stadium planning efforts to date. We are committed to finishing the remaining site-specific necessary due diligence to support our vision to build a world-class stadium near Wolf Lake area in Hammond, Indiana. We appreciate the leadership shown by Governor Braun, Speaker Houston, Senator Mishler, and members of the Indiana General Assembly in establishing this critical framework and path forward to deliver a premier venue for all of Chicagoland and a destination for Bears fans and visitors from across the globe. We value our partnership and look forward to continuing to build our working relationship together. So the Bears came out with that comment, and then later on, Governor Pritzker was, I think, I don't know where he was. He was obviously dealing with something else because he's got. I also think I don't think people really remember this when they're dealing with this stuff, but the governor of Illinois has other stuff to deal with other than whether the Bears are going to build a stadium. I don't know if people are paying attention to the news or whatever, but there's other stuff going on. And when he was asked about it, he said that he was kind of surprised by this because apparently the Bears and state lawmakers had a good meeting on what was that, Wednesday, for 3 hours. And they were going to put the other drama of it was that there was supposed to be an Illinois committee that was supposed to put up a bill that would give the Bears roughly like $850 million in infrastructure and a tax freeze for 40 years. And they were apparently, according to the governor, ready to go. And then then the Bears said, "Oh, can you pause that? We want to make some tweaks to it," which is fine. Like everyone wants to make tweaks or whatever. But then the Bears came out with that statement, and Pritzker is talking to reporters, and he essentially says, they're saying statements not some confirmation that they're moving to Indiana, but rather than Indiana asked them to say that they're going to move forward with negotiations. But I have to say it's very disappointing to hear that they would put that statement out, but not say anything about the advancement that's been made in the state of Illinois. But we're waiting to hear from the Bears and what they would like to do next. Joe, my main thing through this whole process has been not to get political or anything like that, but to me, this has been much more difficult than it needs to be to build a stadium. And I think all parties are responsible for this. I think that the Bears are responsible for this, for buying land in Arlington Heights that they had no plan for, and then shifting their focus once they bought the land to Chicago, and then shifting their focus back to Arlington Heights, and now shifting their focus to Northwest Indiana. From the state's view, I could see how that's pretty annoying when you're like trying to figure out a plan and they keep moving stuff around. And then from the Bears' point of view, I also understand, like, all right, we focused on Arlington Heights. Can we please negotiate with this? And then you're dealing with the political stuff of, Chicago Democrats now wanting to seem like they're letting the Bears leave Chicago, so they're against this, and all the politics aside to it. So, I think that this 6-year process at this point, since the Bears bought the land in Arlington Heights in 2021, it's been insane to follow. It's been nauseating to follow. I don't know. This is just another turn. For me personally, this feels like another turn. I don't think this means anything that they're going to go to Northwest Indiana. It has just been a process, Joe, that I saw someone say, Ben Johnson, this is like the one thing that Ben Johnson doesn't have control over. And that's why the reason why this is kind of happening. And it kind of feels like that, doesn't it? Like this just feels like a process that needlessly has taken 6 years and that has, taken so many twists and turns that I feel like we could have avoided.
Yeah, well, the Bears in a situation where it's like you're dating multiple people here, and you're trying to establish a relationship with one person, but they kind of want to advance things further. But then, well, I still like them, but but they want to move forward. So then I'm thinking, well, I gotta listen to them. So the Bears are just in this situation where you're trying to balance staying here in Chicago, trying to make it work. But the Illinois legislature, the governor, doesn't really. It doesn't seem like they're not as urgent. Where Indiana is like, let's go. We're making the steps. We're going to make it happen. You interested? And then the Bears say in the statement yesterday that, quote unquote, I'm paraphrasing here, but we're looking forward to continuing this relationship. Well, what does that tell you then? Like, they're ready to move forward, and it has been too long. I mean, let's go already. Where I think the Bears are, maybe Kevin Warren's feeling some pressure from, I don't know whether it's the McCaskies or whoever, the fan base, everybody, that let's go already. Like, let's see this. I'm 61. I keep thinking, like, am I going to be around when this finally gets done? And I'm sure there are people a lot older than me thinking the same thing. Because even if they put shovels in the ground tomorrow or today, I mean, this is going to be 3-5 years, guessing, before the stadium
is going to be a process.
Open. It's going to take a while. So, and then you're looking at, by the time it's finally built and ready to play a football game or host the first event, whatever it may be, it's probably going to be like a 10 years starting from back when the Bears actually bought the property in Arlington Heights. So it's very frustrating. And I'm not into politics. That's not my bag. And people want to point fingers at Pritzker, and I don't know if that's fair or not, but I do know if they move to Indiana, this would fall in his ample lap. Because this is on his watch, and that would be, who knows what someone's legacy will be when you're in the moment, but that's probably going to be his legacy, however long he remains governor of the state. So let's get it done. But the Bears, let's move forward. Let's go. Indiana's saying, okay, let's go. And then the state is still, I don't think there's just enough urgency, but how many times have we seen negotiations in sports, in life, where you think it's done and then last minute, boom, it's like, oh, they worked something out last minute. So I think that's maybe my just wishful thinking. That's what will happen, even though right now the arrow seems to be pointing up toward, I'm not using the right phrase here, but the arrow, the Indiana is trending. Let's put it that way to have the Bears, but maybe we'll all be surprised.
Yeah, I agree. This just feels like another part of the negotiations, right? Like the thing that this does is it finally gives the Bears some sort of leverage, right? Like, the Bears have never really had leverage in this whole situation. Like, they bought the land without coming up with a plan or whatever in 2021. So, like, for the state, it was kind of like, all right, you already bought this land. Like, what, like, what are you going to do? Right. Like, so I kind of see where maybe the bit where the state might have been like, all right, you guys don't really have any leverage. We can take our time here. We can do whatever we kind of want. And now that you go to Indiana, and Indiana's like, hey, come here. Like, this will be great. Like, you can do whatever you want here. And that does give the Bears leverage. And I think it's just another part of the plan, right? I think it's, to put it bluntly, I mean, the Bears are just doing what literally any NFL and professional team has done in this country over the past, 100 years, 50 years. Like, you just saw what the Chiefs did to Missouri and Kansas. They basically pitted them against each other, and Kansas gave them a sweetheart deal, right? Like, you've seen these stadium deals where in Buffalo, huge amounts of taxpayer money. Tennessee, a good chunk of taxpayer money, right? Like, unfortunately, in Chicago, you saw the in the 90s when Jerry Reinsdorf was threatening to move to Tampa Bay, and being like, if you don't give me the sweetheart deal, I'm going to leave, and how that all kind of works. The Rams leaving Los Angeles. There's so many different examples of this. So This is just another part of the negotiation. I think this does bring us closer to a conclusion more than we probably were even a month ago. I do think that we are closer to a conclusion. I just don't think that this means that they're going to Indiana. This is just another negotiating tool. I thought it was noteworthy that the Bears, like, Hammond held a press conference on yesterday. There were no renderings. There was no specific location announced. Like, the way the Bears phrased it, it kind of seemed to me like it was kind of like, all right, we're interested in doing this, but it was far from a commitment. So I think we got a ways to go here, Joe, before we actually. If you're talking about shovels in the ground, you can keep waiting because I don't think that's coming anytime soon.
Well, you have a better pulse on the situation than I do, than most people do, and that'd be good. They they should stay in Illinois, right? In Chicago, whether it's Arlington Heights or I mean, I don't think they're going to stay at Soldier Field or do the
No,
other stadium
that's
in
definitely not.
Chicago.
At this point, at this point it's just Arlington Heights or Hammond. Chicago's not in the running at
Yeah,
all.
that other site is not realistic, right? Where they talked
No.
about the other site in Chicago.
No, the Michael Reese thing I think is just like too
Yeah,
narrow for them, and like you would have to build over train tracks. It's just much more. It's mu
pain,
That's the
pain in
one
the
thing
butt.
with Chicago. I think everyone would like to make it work in Chicago. It's just like, where are you going to build it? You know, you
Yeah,
can't build what you want to build in Arlington Heights or in Hammond anywhere on Chicago, and that's just kind of the problem with like a city. Like everything's dug up, everything's mostly built up, right? So you're kind of forced to just go to like these vast areas that Arlington Heights has or Hammond has, and those are the two places that it's down to at this point.
yeah. I think ultimately it comes down to you want two things. You want a beautiful stadium, whether it's domed or not. Dome would be nice, honestly, just because it's the Midwest and weather stinks. Um, I don't need the bare weather games. They're fun. They're cool to watch. The videos are cool. The snowy games, and uh, but yeah, I'm a multi-purpose facility, domed, beautiful stadium would be just awesome. Whether it's in Hammond or Arlington Heights, we want something like that, right? As Bears fans, as Illinois residents, we want that's where our team plays, like the Rams have and the Cowboys have and so many other teams, these beautiful stadiums. And the second thing you want, if you plan on going to one game or every game at home, is accessibility and easy transportation to and from, in and out, right? That's what you want. You want to see our pride and joy, our $1 million home my wife and I just bought and show it off to everybody. Or you, not that we have that. I don't have that. Or you just want something like I can get to and get out pretty easily, and everything is first class. So if that happens to be in Indiana, okay then, right? But let's go, let's go already. So the sentimentality of it, you have to, I guess, get, just dismiss that, discard it at some point, and we'll see what happens. But man, this has been going on too long. But again, Indiana looks like we're ready to move on forward with this relationship, and the Bears are like, okay, that's what we want to do too. We want to get a relationship with somebody, and they're ready. So Illinois, figure it out.
Well, their hand is going to be forced quickly. Obviously, like I said, the session ends by on Friday, so they have a week to do this. Indiana does so, and I do think that, from what I've heard, just from comments, whatever, like Indiana's not going to pass this unless they get it. Like they don't want to be used in the situation. So if they're going to do this, they're doing it because the Bears are committed. So I
Yeah.
do think that we will get a decision here sooner rather than later. So obviously, your favorite state reporter, Michael, will keep you updated as to what's going on, and we'll keep you abreast as to what's happening. But let's move on over now to some football stuff. Let's get ahead here. The Combine officially starts on Tuesday. I'll be in Indianapolis next week. Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson are going to speak with reporters on Tuesday. Then we'll get the chance to talk to some of the top prospects heading into things. So, Joe, today I had a story come up, key things that what we can learn from the Bears at the Combine next week. And I'll start off, but one of my key points was something actually that sorry, not to get away from football again, but we haven't had a chance to talk to the Bears about the whole Ian Cunningham situation, and it will be interesting to see. I'm sure we'll ask Ryan Poles about it. Now, listen, I don't know how much he'll have to say. This feels like something that it feels like more of a George McCaskey, Kevin Warren kind of situation where they kind of deal with the league with this. But I think the one thing we could get out of this situation is we'll hear from him about, I'm sure he'll praise Ian Cunningham, that he deserves the role and the kind of stuff. And we'll hear about Jeff King becoming the new assistant general manager. But I think at least Ryan will give us at least a little bit of insight into, was he surprised about the draft picks? And for me, mostly, like, are the Bears doing anything about it? That's my big question. Like, are the Bears talking to the league about this at all? Or is this something where they can't talk about it, there's nothing to negotiate, and the situation's over?
Yes, it's a good question that you will ask because the Bears should be ticked off. They deserve those 2 picks. Um, and again, this is not a Falcons thing. I mean, they're going to hire the guy they think is the right guy for the job and have his input. But we're just talking basically, the business card is going to say this, but you're actually going to be doing a lot more. The Bears deserve those picks, and they should be ticked off. So I'm curious too. Maybe he'll say the right things, and he won't give you a really good answer, which probably will be the case. But those picks are big. I mean, end of the 3rd round. I know it could be Zach Pickens, but it also could be someone really good, even if it's a kick returner, a punt returner, someone who's going to make an impact.
Could be Puka Nacua. You don't know what you're going to get in the 3rd
Right.
round. Like, it could be an impactful player. And it's interesting because, like, these are compensatory picks, right? Like, they're not coming from the Falcons. Like, these are extra picks that they put in as part of the Rooney Rule. And yeah, I think this would be less of a story if Matt Ryan hadn't gone out there and literally said that Ian Cunningham is going to be leading the strategy when it comes to the draft and free agency, and he's going to rely on Ian Cunningham to make those decisions. Like, from everything Matt Ryan has said, and maybe he's just, being blindly honest, and, we obviously love that as media people, but if it wasn't for those comments, I don't feel like there'd be much of an argument. But now it's kind of like, you need those draft picks. So, yeah, I agree. I don't know how much Ryan is going to say, but I think we'll try to ask him about it because those are important things. And it kind of takes away from the rule, right? Like, the whole point of the Rooney Rule is to raise people who maybe haven't gotten opportunities before. And that's exactly what the Bears did. They gave Ian Cunningham an opportunity, that they developed him. They used, they were able to give him a good opportunity. Not that, he did most of the work, not to say that to, give the Bears credit for Ian Cunningham. Obviously, he's the one who put in the work and that kind of stuff. But the whole point of the program is to uplift people who didn't have opportunities before. So if you're not doing that, then it kind of takes away from the whole program, and it kind of takes away from the progress that the NFL, quote unquote, wants to give in the league.
Yeah, you're right. And the Bears have done what the league wanted to do, right? Cunningham, Ryan Poles himself. So they do everything by the book, and now they're not going to be compensated when a situation which was organic in that Cunningham earned the job. I mean, his resume, it's pretty much impeccable. I mean, this is not just some guy that they're taking a chance on because he's a minority. No, he's more than qualified, and good for him that he got the position he did with the Falcons. So I don't know, Michael, that doesn't sit well with me. And if it's not sitting well with me, and I'm just another guy who watches the Bears and covers the Bears a little bit, I can't believe it's sitting well with the Bears. I don't know what Kevin Warren. I know he's got his hands tied up with the other stuff we were just talking about with the stadium deal, but come on, or the McCaskies. I mean, you're the McCaskies. You're a name, you're a household name in the National Football League because of Papa Bear.
They do have clout. There is clout.
Yes, clout was the word I'm looking for. Use it. And this is not cheating. You're getting screwed here. They should get those picks.
Yeah, I agree. I we'll see what the situation is and how much Ryan is able to say about it. But yeah, I think them also not getting it just opens up people exploiting the rule, right? Like, you could see so many other teams being like, okay, we're going to hire whatever so-and-so to be our president, but really it's this or whatever, right? Like, it just opens up the can of worms. And if I'm the NFL, I just look at this and I'm like, all right, this is a pretty easy situation to see. Maybe he's not technically the head of football operations, but I think, listen, I think with some context, I think this is a pretty easy situation that should be figured out. So we'll see that. Go ahead, Joe. What you got?
Yeah, I was just surprised too, and maybe I'm wrong unless I've missed it, but I thought this would have more legs as a national story with the Bears. Just like on ESPN and guys, there's so many podcasts and shows, people doing NFL shows. I just thought this would take a little more legs. Maybe people don't care about the Bears still, despite the Caleb heroics and everything they did this past season. But I just thought I'd be hearing more about it on national outlets, and I haven't,
Yeah.
unless I missed it.
No, I haven't. I don't feel like it's been talked about that much. Obviously, the NFL, like there are a bunch of million things going on, and the coaching hirings and stuff
Sure.
like that. So, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Ryan could just say nothing. I don't know. It's probably above his pay grade, so he'll probably leave it up to Kevin and George, and maybe that's more of a question for the owners' meetings in a month. But obviously, I'm sure we'll try to ask him at least just to get a comment on. Ian Cunningham is really close to Ryan Poles and was a big factor in a lot of what Ryan Poles did. So it'll be really interesting to see how things kind of change with Jeff King kind of stepping into that role. Another question, Joe, I kind of had heading into the combine next week that the Bears can answer is, I feel like at the end of the season press conference, the Bears, both Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles said that there are going to be a lot of tough decisions to make. Obviously, the Bears are roughly, according to Spot Rack and over the cap, roughly like $10 million over the salary cap as of right now. They actually released Ahmed Ogbongbingba yesterday to save $2 million in cap space, but they didn't really get into how they could potentially save salary cap space. I'm actually going to have a story on Monday about who are potential cap casualties, but I'm interested to see, Joe. They probably won't get into the specifics of like, we're going to release this player, or we're going to restructure this contract, but I'm really interested to see how Ryan kind of answers those questions, because if he's more on the conservative side and he's fine with having more salary cap room, I think that kind of tells you about how they're going to approach free agency and trades, right? Because if you don't have much trade or free agency room, you're not signing Trey Hendrickson. You're not signing these top guys, and you're not going to make a trade for Max Crosby because you don't have the salary cap space to make that trade. So I'm really interested to see what Ryan says about the salary cap space, because he's going to have to do a lot of work here to create some room.
Yeah, he'll be careful in his phrasing. He always is, and probably
Yeah.
doesn't tell you much. Again, like I've never looked at Ryan Poles as a dynamic speaker. No, that's okay. That's okay. Just win football games and build a competitive football team. But yeah, you're right. If they're gonna try to find the solution to their pass rush woes via trade, Crosby, free agency, whatever, then someone's got to go. And maybe it is part of a DJ Moore trade. But there's probably going to be one of your favorite Bears who's got to move on. Can you tease us a little bit? Are you thinking maybe Cole Kmet? Because I want Cole back. At early last season, I wasn't quite so sure, but it'd be fun to have him back. But did I read where he's ready? He thinks he could be a number one tight end, fair, and that maybe he's looking to move on.
The post that I saw was a parody account. I saw someone like
Okay,
retweet it or something like that. That's not a real.
that's what I figured.
Again, social media. Cole has not said that.
You got to be so careful. You don't know what's real and what's AI generated.
That's why you got to go to showlocal.com. Everything at showlocal.com is real and verified instead of social media. Yeah, some guys, I won't give the full list. I think the obvious candidate here is obviously Tremaine Edmonds. We've talked about it. He's got the 8th highest salary cap hit. He's got $17.5 million hit. If they cut him before the June 1st deadline, that's only a $2.5 million cap hit. And that saves you $15 million. Again, when we go through these names, I want to emphasize and say these aren't because these are bad players. Like there's a reason why Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson said these are tough decisions. Like Tremaine Edmonds had a great year before he got injured, playing at the weak side linebacker spot. He had 4 interceptions before, but at the money he's making, I see the Bears maybe potentially being like, all right, we can shed $15 million here, and we can either re-sign DeMarco Jackson at a cheaper rate. He played well when he was in that role. Or maybe you just drafted linebacker in the 2nd or 3rd round. He's a prime candidate for me, just based on just where the money is and what the need is at that point. So Tremaine's a guy. Cole Kmet is another guy. Though Cole's a tough one, and I kind of, in my story on Monday, kind of wrestle with that, where it's kind of like, Ben Johnson really likes two tight end sets. You saw how important that was to the run game success. Like
Yep.
a lot of defenses had a hard time figuring out where the tight end was going to go, and that really created a lot of holes for the running back. So maybe they restructure a deal with Cole and they're like, listen, you're not the number one tight end anymore. We can maybe move some money around and create some signing bonuses here or there. But Cole's another guy where maybe you work his deal, but maybe you also are just like, listen, Cole, like maybe you do think you can be a number one tight end somewhere else, and we can sign a guy like Durham Smythe instead, and he can be the number two and more of your blocking tight end, or some other guy who can be more of a blocking number two tight end to complement Colston Loveland. But those are a couple of the guys that I would kind of look like. DJ Moore, you can't cut him. I think looking at it, you lose like $5 million if you cut him right now.
Yeah, you're not going to
before the June 1st. No. So if you do move him, it'd have to be a trade. But then what do you trade? Who's taking on that salary, right? Like it unload. Like this is a whole thing. So that's why I want to talk to Ryan Poles about it, because he's not going to tell you I'm cutting Tremaine Edmonds, I'm restructuring this deal, but he can at least give you an insight into, well, we could potentially be active this way, or we're going to be cautious this way. Because I don't feel like we really got a lot of that when Ben and Ryan were talking at the end of the season.
Well, if you traded DJ, you'd be trading him for another guy who's making a lot of money with that team, Crosby, yes, for an example. And then maybe you sweeten the pot. You'd have to sweeten the pot with the draft pick. And then like, how high of a draft pick, that would all have to be figured out. Yeah. But so that's one way. But you know what? Hey, if the Chiefs restructured Patrick Mahomes' contract, I mean, we see it every year. Most teams doing it every year, restructuring contracts to make things work. What do you think about? I want to ask you, what do you think about signing Bradley Chubb? I know a lot of people will be interested in him. What do you think about him? And again, it depends on what it's going to cost you. But Chubb is, I think he's like 29, 30.
Somewhere around that age, yeah.
Right. So it's not like he's only got a year left in his football career if he stays healthy. What do you think about him as a potential fit?
To me, it goes back to the money. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I do think someone would be willing to pay him. I know he had that injury a couple of years ago, but I think he's also had like 10 and a half sacks or a little bit more over the last couple of seasons. So he's proven that he can be a productive player. So I think it kind of goes back to, quite honestly, like where I'm at right now from what we've heard from Ryan Poles at this point of the offseason, I would guess that any defensive tackle or defensive end moves that they make are happening in the draft. I think so many draft people have said that this is a very deep, edge rushing group. Yeah. It's not top heavy. You're not going to find a Max Crosby or that kind of guy out there. But I don't know if the Bears necessarily need that, right? Like I think if you can get a young guy who can consistently pressure opposite Montez Sweat, I think that opens things up for Montez Sweat. And if you get another defensive tackle like the Clemson guy, I think it's PJ Parker or some other guys inside the middle to create more pressure up the middle, I think that really opens things up for Sweat and Booker and other guys like that. So I do think from where I stand right now and from what I know from what Ryan Poles has said in the past, I think Bradley Chubb is a great I think he's going to be a top guy to watch out for, but I do wonder whether the Bears are kind of like, I don't know if you want to trade for Crosby. I don't know if you want to, spend a lot of money for Trey Hendrickson when maybe we can fix our line issues in the first 3 rounds by drafting a tackle and an edge rusher and a safety. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think they've got to make at least one splash move for their defense. It doesn't have to be Crosby or Hendrickson or Myles Garrett, but maybe it's Chubb, and then you supplement with the draft. Because the draft, assuming you keep those 3 picks, rounds 1, 2, and 3, I'm figuring at least 2 of those picks are defensive guys, if not all 3. And I expect those guys to be day 1 starters, unless they're coming off injury and you got to get them up to speed, kind of like what we saw with this past draft class. So I'm looking at 2 starters coming out of this draft class minimum, and then you gotta have a splash move. You can't just say, "Hey, we're getting Odengbo back at some point early in the season, and we'll get a full year of Austin Booker," and because you still got to address the safety situation too. If one, both, or none are coming back, Byard and Brisker, so I'd be disappointed if there wasn't a big move. Like, I'm not talking about special teams guy who's going to be your backup linebacker, or because maybe Chubb. If it's Chubb, would you be happy with Chubb and the draft picks who are coming in?
Yeah, I think it just depends on the money, right? Like I
Yeah,
think and it also like remember like I think the Bears are also in a spot like you don't want to shed money just to shed money. Like they have talented guys out there, right? Like if you get rid of Tremaine Edmonds, you're going to have to replace his talent and his leadership. If you get rid of Cole Kmet, you're going to have to replace that. If you get rid of DJ Moore, you're going to have to replace that. So it's kind of one of those things where it's kind of like, okay, like are you better off losing? Let's say, for example, are you better off losing, and this is just random off the top of my head, are you better off losing Tremaine Edmonds, DeAndre Swift, and Cole Kmet in order to get Bradley Chubb?
no,
Well, there you go. But you might have to make those moves in order for that to happen. You know what I
right,
mean?
yeah,
So it's like
right.
one of those situations where it's just kind of like, the salary cap, like, is really, this is the reason why you don't see dynasties too often in the NFL, because the salary cap kind of makes it a thing where everyone has to make tough decisions and get rid of good players every single year. So it will be really interesting to see, and that's something that I'm really interested to see, what Ryan and Ben talk about on Tuesday, just based on what is the plan here. Are you willing to say goodbye to some guys that you really believe in order for the future? Is it a situation, I've seen so many people compare it to, who was it? Wasn't it who did the Bears trade, or who did the Bulls trade in the late '80s to get Horace Grant? Wasn't it Oakley or
Charles
whatever?
Oakley.
Yeah, a lot of people have compared the situation with DJ Moore, where you trade Charles Oakley in order to get Horace Grant or whoever they ended up
Yeah, I
getting
forget.
for.
It was Bill Cart. I think it was
Or was it
Cartwright
Bill
for
Cartwright? Maybe it was
Oakley.
Cartwright.
Were you born then?
No, but this is just lore that I know. But I've seen a lot of people make that comparison where it's kind of like everyone loves DJ Moore, but do you have to get rid of a guy you love in order to make a move like
Yes.
that? So we'll see what that all kind of looks like, Joe. But we'll hopefully get some answers. We're not going to get Ryan Poles is not going to say we're cutting Tremaine Edmonds, we're cutting DeAndre Swift, and we're signing this guy. You're never going to get that. But hopefully we get some
Right.
insight into being like, maybe Ryan is going to say, listen, we're not going to be that aggressive. Like we feel comfortable, we'll manipulate the cap, but maybe we're not going to be as aggressive as some fans would like. Because Ryan could say that. He kind of hinted at that a little bit at the end of season press conference. So that'll be interesting to say. And I know that's probably what Bears fans don't want to hear. I know, Joe, I'm sure, I don't know if you watched the Max Crosby, Caleb Williams podcast, but I know a lot of Bears fans were super excited about that, and we're like, "Oh, that means that Max Crosby's coming to Chicago." But at this point, not to be a Debbie Downer, but I feel like that's more of a fan stream than coming to reality at this point.
Yeah, that is the fantasy. That's the fantasy of getting Max Crosby. I mean, this city would go crazy. How
Oh
about
yeah.
striking a deal to stay in Illinois and signing Max Crosby? Would that be an off season or what? Bears fans wouldn't know what to do with themselves. uh, but Michael, I keep thinking about like how much will this roster change in the off season, and maybe a lot, maybe a little. Two things I'm confident about, as we've talked so much about the Bears season during and even the postseason now, is one, you got your quarterback, you got the coaching staff, and seemingly an organization that's finally looking like they know what they're doing. And I know I'm not going to just say 1 year the Bears turned it around, everything is fine and dandy, and Ryan Poles will have a statue someday. I'm not saying any of that, but I figure whoever they bring in, even if they've got 4 new starters on defense, a couple on offense, I feel confident that Ben Johnson will figure this out and they know what they're doing. Whether they take guys you've never heard of or guys it's Max Crosby and they lose some guys here or there, and you have a whole new look. I think Ben will figure it out here. I think the culture is in a good position. The best players from last year, all of them, if not, maybe DJ Moore is going, whatever, are going to be back. And you can figure out this defense because your offense, the good news is you don't have to worry about the quarterback. Even if he, heaven forbid, gets hurt or something, you like the backup in Bajan. You like your receivers. I know left tackle is an issue. I might be the only guy in Chicago who's not as concerned as everybody else about the left tackle position because it was kind of I don't want to say a mess last season with the injuries and, Trapillo is your right tackle, is your left tackle. And then, Braxton Jones can't stay healthy and all this stuff. And they were fine. The run game was good. Caleb's sacks just like plummeted in a good way. So they survived. And I think you can find a guy. I'm not saying you have to have your future all-pro left tackle in place by next season in order for this franchise to move forward. But you can find a guy because of the strength of your other guys on the offensive line. So to me, fix the defense. You're going to have draft capital. You can figure out the money, whether you bring in Crosby or Chubb or somebody else, but you can fix it. You don't have to worry about fixing really the one side, because the other side, the offense, assuming everyone's healthy, you're in good shape there. Even if DJ Moore has to move on for whatever reason, I think you can find. I'm not saying it's easy to find another DJ Moore, because where I stand with DJ Moore. You're on the same page with me here. You could find another wide receiver, whether that's through the draft or free agency.
Yeah, and Joe, I want to hit on something that you're going in my last point about the draft. Like, I think that's the one thing we also don't know. Like, one last question that we can get from Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson is, what are they looking for in the draft, right? Like, maybe they'll tell us, like, they're not going to tell us specifically who they're looking at, but they could say, like, listen, we view value. We think it's a deep edge class, and we're going to find value there somewhere. Or like, we think we like the defensive tackles this year, or like we like the running backs. Maybe that's something that we might not expect. So hopefully we'll learn more about that. Like, what is their draft strategy, and how are they going to approach it? Because Joe, like you said, there's a lot of revamping that needs to happen, and a lot of it needs to happen in the draft, right? So I think we can both agree defensive tackle, defensive end, safety are priorities. Maybe running back if you want to look toward the future a little bit with those top 3 or 4 picks. But to me, those have to be the priority. And I think you can find a lot of talent there to find that value, because listen, the Bears are in a different spot right now. They don't have a top 10 pick for the first time since 2022. So at 25, you might just go with the best player available, whether that's defensive tackle, whether that's defensive end, whether that's safety, because you're not going to overshoot for a position, right? And you can maybe get comparable value in the second round. So I think that'll be really interesting to learn from Ben and Ryan, because I think I'm not breaking any news here. Successful teams are successful for long periods of time because they build through the draft, and they're able to replace expiring contracts or expensive contracts with young, cheap talent. So it'll be really interesting to see. Are you expecting Ben or Ryan to say, like, we're looking at defensive end or whatever? Or are you just kind of thinking that they'll say, oh, like, we're going to look at this group or whatever?
Yeah, probably the latter.
Yeah.
I mean, we know, look, if they stay at 25, or if they retain that pick, we know a few things, because I've always been a best player available. But if there's the quarterback, you're like, boy, this quarterback dropped to 25. You're not taking a quarterback.
No.
You're not taking a tight end. You're not taking a wide receiver again, right? You're not taking a wide receiver at 25. No. You're not going to find a franchise left tackle at 25. They're gone to the top 10. So, and I don't think you're taking a running back at 25.
No, I wouldn't say you're taking a running back. That's more of like a second or third. I would even say that's probably like more of a third or fourth round pick as opposed to a first or second round pick based on what you have. Like, I understand that DeAndre Swift is in his final year of his contract, and, he could be a potential cut if you have to create salary cap space. But I would be pretty surprised if they used the first or second round pick on a running back.
Exactly. So if you're at 25, and you're looking, to me, it's just like, who is the highest rated player you have at 25 from these positions? I don't think it's going to be a safety. I don't know if there's any great safety. They're like, oh my God, that safety dropped to 25. I can't believe you better take him. It's got to be either a lineman, whether it's an edge guy or an inside guy, or a linebacker. Because I don't even think a corner they would consider taking at 25, knowing that you could, because, there's so many guys who are, whose contracts got to be picked up or not, or whatever, you let them go. But to me, it's got to be one of those 3 positions. Edge rusher, inside dude or linebacker to me.
I would add the one thing I would add to that is hopefully Ryan will also give us an update on Ozzy Trapillo because the last time we heard from him, it was he had the surgery after. But I don't know if he'll get into specific details. But listen, like this is a pretty serious injury that he's coming off of. I think
Yeah.
I'm not a medical expert by any means, but from what I hear people say, like it's actually the hardest injury to come back from despite modern medicine or whatever. So you could be in a situation where maybe in the first round you are taking a left tackle. I know you don't think you could potentially find a franchise left tackle, but the Bears might trade up if they think that they can get a franchise left tackle because listen, like we know how important Ben Johnson thinks the offensive line is. You obviously saw it, how much they invested in it last year. So I could see a world um, where if Ozzy Trapillo's rehab isn't looking great, like it doesn't seem like he could be the same player as he was, expected to be moving forward, I would look at the left tackle spot. And listen, maybe they use free agency and they sign a veteran guy like mid-tier guy and something like that. But that will also be something that I'll be keeping an eye out next week, just based on whether we get an update on Ozzy Trapillo and whether or not it's good. Because if it's kind of more of a situation where it's like, all right, Ozzy, we don't expect him to come back by December, but we're hoping that he'll have a full recovery and he can live up to his potential, then I think I'm more likely to say, all right, they'll probably look at it in free agency and handle it that way. But if they're more kind of like, yeah, I don't know, we're still waiting to see how he kind of looks, that might raise some alarms for me. And I might be more of a, okay, you draft your guy in the left, in the first round or even in the second round.
Yeah. Well, you're right. There's a lot, a lot going on here. We got to figure out the future of Ozzy Trapillo with his health, but we're not going to know. And one of the phrases I hate when media write or say they underwent successful surgery today, because all that tells me is the patient didn't die, because you don't know how a guy's going to recover. Look at Tariq Cohen, just one example off the top of my head. He had successful surgery, and then he never was able to come back. He had complications, and he was out of the league a lot sooner than you thought he would be. Remember a little Tariq Cohen, how fun player he was. So you don't know how guys are going to recover, and I don't know. I've had a lot of knee surgeries. I've had 4, and I'm just a weekend hack with all my sports. But Ozzy, he's not a sprinter. He's an old lineman. I'm not saying Earl Garza played a whole season without an ACL. So you don't know, but it might be a lost year for Ozzy. But that to me, that's like, well, is this? I'm not ready to say it's likely the guy's career is over before it even really started.
Sure.
And no one's going to know that. Even the Bears medical people aren't going to know that. But if he's not ready, even if it's an entire lost 2026 campaign for him, okay, so you come back to next year. I know it's a long way ago, 1.5 years, but then he comes back and he's back on your team, and I would assume you still have high expectations for him.
Right.
So
yeah,
I don't know, but you called the wide receiver pick last year early, and I'm like, they're not taking a wide receiver again. So maybe they would take a tackle. But boy, if they took an offensive tackle, and then you're thinking, okay, well, how ready is this guy to man that position? And now we still haven't addressed the defense in the draft. Now we got to wait till late second round to fix this bad defense. So I don't know the names. We don't. It's funny with mock drafts. First round mock drafts, I can see like a lot of people do like the 2-round mock draft. Second round, you don't know who's going to be there.
Second round's a little bit tougher to do. I usually stick to first rounds, and this year
it's so hard.
Yeah,
to know who's going to be available in round 2. I mean, generally, people will knock the draft experts and say, this guy only got 2 picks right, but really, those guys are great because they do identify the guys who are likely going in the top 20 picks, if not the entire first round. I would say 80% of the guys who they said this guy's going to go in the first round, top 10, top 20. It does happen. You just not quite sure of the team because you don't know how it's going to all break down and who's going to pick this guy before you get a chance to. So Anyway, we'll have more time to talk about the draft, but I would love it. You got to get 2 starters from this
Yeah.
draft class,
Listen, that's
right?
the key because, listen, Ryan Poles hasn't really done that on the defensive side of things. I had a story this week going back at his history of drafting and, signing and trading for linemen. And his most successful guy is, Montez Sweat, obviously, that came through a trade. And then I would say the most successful guy he's drafted is Gervon Dexter in the second round. And obviously we've talked about our thoughts about, how Gervon, plays well, but he doesn't live up to the second round potential, right? So it'll be really interesting to see how much, maybe we'll learn how much Dennis Allen is involved in the process. Not that he wasn't involved last year, but last year really felt like a situation where Ben kind of took over the draft and Dennis got to be like, hey, can I get a pick over here? Can I get a guy over here? Or like, so it'll be really interesting to see how things kind of change up this time around. So yeah, we'll get a lot of those answers. We'll try to get some answers on Tuesday when we hear from Ryan Poles and Ben Johnson at the scouting combine. Like I said, I'll be there next week for most of the week. So I'll get you guys information, not only from Ben and Ryan, but from some of the prospects. We'll get to see some names, get to meet some people. So it'll be fun. So make sure you're following all my content next week from Indianapolis. And who knows, maybe I'll have to run over to the state capitol and cover a stadium press conference or something like that. At least, at least that works with the travel. At least that works out timing wise for the company. So I'm glad that can happen. But Joe, I feel like I don't need to say it, but I will say I'm sure a lot of Bears fans are happy to that the Bears have the number 25 pick. And the story surrounding the Bears around the NFL is much different than it has been the last couple of years, where it's like, is the head coach going to work? Are they going to take a quarterback? Which quarterback are they going to take? It's we're having different conversations when it comes to the combine than we had over the past, 5-6 years.
Yes, I kind of do miss that talk because, but
I do
you'd rather
not.
be picking 25. You'd preferably be picking 32nd is
Sure.
the ultimate goal. but I could tell you, just like you had asked me a couple months ago, like, Joe, who's projected to go in the top 5 picks? I'm like, I don't know. You go, my point exactly. So I am less boned up on the top 10 picks, projected top 10 picks in the NFL draft than I have been in years.
Yes. So we'll get into it. Obviously, there's plenty of time before the draft happens at the end of April, but the offseason moves forward, and I'll be at the combine next week. So make sure you're following all my work at Shaw Local next week. Adam Dwojak 94. Make sure you're following Joe at Joe Aguilar 64. He's got your Northwest Herald Sports playoff coverage. So make sure you're following him. But that's everything that we've got for this week's episode of the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate all the comments in the YouTube stream. Make sure you hit that like button down there and subscribe. That's the best way to support us, help us grow, and also know when we are going to be going live. Appreciate all the love and support on Facebook. Got some Facebook comments there as well. And if you're listening to us on the podcast, appreciate you joining us there. Make sure you subscribe to us wherever we're available on podcasts and give us a good rating. We really appreciate your support from there. So, like I've said, I'll be at the combine next week. We will try to do a show from Indianapolis, or Joe will join me from Indianapolis next week. We'll figure out the timing just based on how things are kind of chaotic next week, but we'll work out a time. We'll try to give you guys like a 24-hour notice, and we'll react to what Ryan and Ben said on Tuesday at the combine. But until then, stay warm, enjoy some time off over the weekend, and we will talk to you folks next week.